everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Jameson Files. I'm Carrie Weber. I'm your host, and I'm so glad to have you back with us for another informational, exciting, and what I think is going to be a very fun episode. I'm really thrilled to have a good friend as our guest that I'll introduce in just a moment, but I do want to encourage all of you that support the Jameson Files community, that you're a part of this community. We want to continue to bring guests and resources and topics that are most important to you. So I want to encourage you to reach out to us here at Jameson and give us your requests, any guests that you want to see in the future, any topics you want us to cover and tackle for you and with you. That's what we want to be here for. So reach out to us here at Jameson and let us know what you'd like to hear and see in the Jameson Files in the future. Also, we appreciate you introducing the Jameson Files to others in the dental community. You can follow us on our Facebook page, watch us live, just like those of you that may be joining the live stream today on the Jameson Facebook page, or you can watch the videos on Facebook or YouTube. And then if you are a podcast person, you can subscribe to the Jameson Files anywhere that you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it. So join us, stay locked in, and let us know what you want to hear in the future. So today we're talking digital dentistry, and I'm really excited to have my friend, Dr. Chad Duplantis of Fort Worth, Texas, joining us today to talk about this and talk about his journey and what successes he has experienced over time and perhaps some of the lessons that he's learned. So Chad, thank you so much for being with me today.
I'm so glad to be here. And you know what? I got to tell you a story. I'm so glad that we finally got this worked out, because I'm sitting here in a closet and I'm watching live on Facebook, and you know, we were having some technical difficulties, and I'm watching you on Facebook and I'm getting this.
Uh-oh.
And then all of a sudden it worked out and I can see you, and we're both like actually moving at the same time now. And so I think the technological difficulties have gone beyond us. So we're good.
See,
Yes.
technology,
So,
it's a part of our world these days. I mean, we just got to live with it and go with it, right?
Exactly. So, and I usually don't wear this silly headset. It's going to drive me nuts. So you'll probably see me dinking with it a lot, but you know, we'll get through this, because
You look good.
I'll explain the closet in a minute.
Yeah, you look so serious. You look legit. You've got the headset. You've got all the things. I am curious to know the closet story, so we'll get to that.
Yeah.
The backstory on Dr. Duplantis and how we know each other. We've known each other for several years now, through some times when we were speaking on the same courses, a lot of opportunities that have come your way in the last several years as a speaker, as a key opinion leader, as an instructor, and I've had the privilege of seeing you speak and spending time with you out in the world and watching you teach and seeing what value you're bringing to the dental community. A lot of what you speak on and teach on is digital dentistry, and I'm curious to learn a little bit, and for those of you that may not know you very well, or maybe they do but they don't know your backstory, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey in dentistry. What led you to incorporate so much digital dentistry, the technology that you have in your practice? What is it that you find led you to make those decisions for how you practice? And how do you find yourself from making that decision to being the teacher and key opinion leader in those topics that you are today?
You know, great story. I'd love to tell it. But first off, let me explain why I'm in the closet first, okay? Because it has, I think it relates to kind of digital dentistry. But basically, found out this past week that we have a router in the office that's on the fritz. And so what's happened is that I have to get close to the router. Otherwise, I would be the one that's choppy. So I've been watching my bandwidth back here and making sure everything's good. And I've got this new computer that I could plug an Ethernet cable into it, but I left the attachment at home. And so that's why I'm back in the closet. I'm in the war room. This is not where I practice dentistry. But
I thought
anyways,
this might
enough
be
of that.
a representation of how your team members really feel about you. They're like, you don't get an office. You
Yeah.
have to hang out in the closet. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is our basically our data hub. So I apologize for the awesome breaker
No.
behind me. But digital dentistry for me it goes back to about 2004. I graduated from dental school in 1999. And at that point in time, same day dentistry was really becoming a hot topic. It was fun. It was a way to possibly eliminate a lab bill. And I learned a lot because in 2004, we incorporated our first piece of digital technology in the office, which was a scanner and a mill combined. And it was an ultimate failure. And it wasn't a failure because of the system. It was a failure because we didn't really have the appropriate systems in place to make it an efficient workflow in our practice. So we spent $100,000 on it. 3 years later, we sold it for $27,000. You can tell that there was not a great return on investment. We did use it quite a bit over those 3 years. And we backed off for a while. And then we got back into it in 2012. And I haven't looked back. I mean, I've taken probably a dozen traditional impressions since 2012. But what's happened over the past 9 years is so much more than just digital clinical technology. Digital technology is just what dentistry is all about. And I hope that we get to some of that because it's a life cycle in your practice and it's a life cycle for your patients of how to use technology.
I feel like your story is probably a lot of stories out there in terms of you jumped right in. You loved the idea of it, but you didn't know how to actualize that successfully in your practice, on that personal implementation level. And do you think that a lot of doctors out there didn't give it that second chance that you did? And perhaps this conversation today is that encouragement to take a look again, knowing what you know from those failures. It could be a whole different story. How did you get to that point where you wanted to give it that second chance? And what did you implement differently to make it so successful for you that second time around?
I have a business partner whom I love dearly. He and I are very close. He's a big brother to me, a mentor and whatnot. But he's 15 years older, and technology wasn't really that important to him. He felt that I've been doing crowns the same way for the past however many years. Why do I need to change what's been working for me? And so he never really caught on because the learning curve for him was much steeper than it was for me. And so you've got one doctor that's using it and one doctor that's kind of like, it's not that great. And so when you don't have two doctors that are on the same page, that sometimes leads to failure. And in no way am I blaming him because I kind of got jaded as well because I don't think that digital technology was where it needed to be in 2004 as to where it has been since 2012. And now it's definitely there. So I do think that it's, one of the things that I teach and one of the things that I've learned over the past several years is that integration of digital technology of any kind needs to be systematic, it needs to be methodical, and it needs to be understood by you and your team, and they need to understand your why as to why you're bringing it into your practice. And if you can check all of those boxes, it's going to be successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more because that's, you have to start there. I was just doing a presentation on implementing change with the team and talking about how we often get ahead of ourselves by just using you as an example, in 2004, 2005, more than likely you bought that technology without even really thinking through how does this fit in my workflow? How does this fit in how I practice? What do I need to communicate to my team? How do I need to help them become more comfortable with this too, so that we're all very successful in incorporating this and really getting that behind where am I wanting to go as a practitioner and how does this play a role in that? And then what do we all need to work on together to get really competent and confident in utilizing these tools on a daily basis?
100%. And everybody learns at a different level. And so, what may take me a day may take somebody else 3, and it may take somebody else an hour, and
Yeah.
we need to be respectful and mindful of that and not get frustrated with those team members that take it on a little bit slower than the others. And so, what we're starting, and we talked about this last week, is that we have so much technology in the office right now. And so, on Monday, my business partner's out. And so we're going to just devote time every Monday. I have them writing down a list of what they need more help on. And we're going to take an hour out of that day and, make sure everybody gets a lunch, because that's really important that everybody gets their lunch. But make sure that we can have that time to go over those pieces of technology and help them improve upon the areas that they need to. And we're going to go back to the basics, and we're going to start really talking about why we use that technology in the first place, because they need to understand that, and that's so important.
Do you find that you embracing this much technology in your practice and the way you practice, the way you take care of your patients, has it started over the last few years attracting particular patients to your practice? Is it a part now of your community reputation as a dentist?
Oh, for sure. And it's funny because we find that out through other pieces of technology that we've incorporated into the office as well. Like, we're getting people that are calling that are saying, are you utilizing a digital scanner in your office? And that's probably, I wouldn't say that's the number one question that people are asking when they're seeking out your office, but you are having patients that are requesting that because they don't want the goopy impressions anymore.
Yeah.
But what we're finding is that when patients see the experience that they have, and I think technology is a big part of the experience in our practice, that they're telling other people. And so when you have a great experience, you want to share that with other people. And so I think technology is a big part of the experience in the practice here. And I believe it's one of 3 key aspects that gets us referrals or people coming into the practice is technology.
Okay, I'm hooked. What are your 3 key aspects that are bringing people to your practice? Technology. What else?
So I did a lecture a while back, and it was obviously very technology based. And I talk a lot about the patient experience. And you could have a patient experience, and people think that, okay, well, I have a water park day, and that's a patient experience, and I serve hot dogs and hamburgers in the parking lot, and that's an experience. But my point is you don't have to have the nicest office. You don't have to throw all these extravagant parties. I mean, you don't have to serve wine or cocktails or anything, to have this experience. But you have to have a solid team. You have to have an appropriate, and my wife said this sounded creepy, but you'll get where I'm coming from, but you have to have appropriate touch points with your patients. And then you need to incorporate the appropriate technology. So I think it's team, touch, and technology. Those are the 3 keys that I think to create a really good patient experience. And you could do it on somewhat of a budget as well, because 2 of them are free.
Yes.
So 2 of them are free.
I could not. I mean, I'm 100% with you on all of that. I mean, and you probably know that to really, and at the same time, that team piece, I mean, just what you were saying, the time that you're committing to work with your team, with, giving undivided attention to that technology, that is such an important pillar for you of your practice vision, speaks volumes as well, because it also shows, number one, technology is important because we're going to spend the time on it, but also it does reveal that team is an important pillar for you because you're spending time with them to help them be successful with that technology. And I think that's huge. When you're approached by doctors, or when you're lecturing or when you're teaching on some of this technology that you are so successfully integrating in your practice, What are you finding or hearing that's getting in their way from experiencing success in that integration of those tools successfully for them? How do you guide them through that? What's getting in their way?
I think it's cost, and I think it's misunderstanding. Cost is always going to be a key factor because, I mean, let's face it, a Porsche is really expensive, but I want one, but I can't figure out how it's going to make me money. And so my job is to show them how this technology that is costly is going to, in the end, make them money. Because if it's integrated appropriately, I promise you, it will make you money. And, I know there's some people in the world that are in dentistry to eradicate the world of dental decay, and that's okay. But I think a lot of us are looking to make a living and put food on the table and get our kids off to college and all that other stuff as well. So I think it's wrapping your head around the bigger picture is that, okay, well, this piece of technology is $50,000. And, and then some people get too wrapped up in how long is it going to take me to recoup that $50,000 versus the overall grander picture as to what it can do. Like, let's take, for instance, a digital scanner. In 2004, that digital scanner was a one-trick pony. I took an impression, I made a crown or an onlay, and that was it. Well, nowadays, you've got a digital scanner, and the one that we utilize in our practice, we utilize it diagnostically, and there's several diagnostic features. We use it preventatively to track scans over time and superimpose those scans. And we also use it restoratively. We use it for implants. We use it for orthodontics. So it's this device that creates so much of a workflow within our practice that there's no way if you use it appropriately, there's no way you're not going to make money off of it.
My father, when he was practicing, he was retiring about the time you were buying that first round of the CAD cam.
Yeah.
And, but, at the time, he was such a believer in technology. He still is. He's alive. I'm acting like this is his eulogy.
Yeah.
But he lectured on it. It kind of had a lot of stuff that a lot of other practices weren't integrating at the time. And for the exact same reason you're saying, Dr. Duplantis, is that he knew the type of dentistry he wanted to provide. He knew the type of care that he wanted to achieve for and with his patients. And so would integrate these types of technology to serve that purpose. And then in return, the productivity of the practices naturally increased because his service and his care were elevating. And, so all of that was elevating together because it was founded in, just like you were saying, it was founded in your vision of what you want to achieve overall in your day-to-day care for your patients and what you have mapped out as that successful journey for a patient in your practice under your care. And so if we get caught up in when will I recoup this? Yes, of course, you have to be able to afford it. You have to be able, the investment has to start paying for itself, but it takes so much more than just buying that piece of technology. It's just like you're saying, it takes believing in it, everyone on the team using it and feeling confident in it, knowing how to talk about it, and seeing the bigger picture of how these tools ultimately help you and your patients on a day-to-day basis. When you can kind of fall in love with the technology in that way, it may be challenging at first because you're not comfortable with it. It's way outside your comfort zone, but just like you're committing the time to work on it, in time, that the more you practice it, the better you get, and the more quickly it will start to pay for itself.
Exactly.
So what are you seeing on the side of digital in the technological world of dentistry right now? What are you excited about? What's really got you fired up, and what are you believing in for practices to take a look at today?
I mean, I'm going to throw a plug out there. I've utilized an iTero scanner for years. I think that if you're looking for something on the clinical side, the iTero scanner is second to none, just with all of the capabilities, and case acceptance has gone through the roof since we've been able to really relate that information to the patient in a very realistic manner. You know, and we've got so many data points that it's just unreal through that. I think that cone beam technology is amazing for the way that it helps us diagnose and treat our patients. But you've got to have a systematic approach. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I mean, I think the worst thing that a dentist could do is walk in and buy a cone beam, a scanner, and a 3D printer, and they're 150 $200,000 in the hole, and they think they're on top of the world, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm in way too deep. So you got to start somewhere, and then you build upon that. And I think that the cornerstone for clinical technology is a scanner. And then you got to decide what's going to be more beneficial to me, to incorporate a cone beam. If I place implants, then absolutely. Or is it going to be a 3D printer? Because throughout this pandemic, we've seen so many jaw problems that, I mean, I'm printing enough night guards to pay for the printer 2 times over in the first 2 months. I mean, it's crazy how many night guards we've printed utilizing the digital printer. But that's clinical. Let's go to the front desk. I think that voice over internet protocol phone systems, Weave is a great addition to the front desk. And then Weave builds upon itself and, add something like Swell for reviews, because Swell's killing it on reviews in our practice. And then that's promoting our online presence. And then it's promoting the patient flow into the practice. So it all feeds upon one another. And, if you think about it up front, that's one of your touch points. It's that first phone call. It's those after treatment texts. There's so many touch points up front that we take for granted that are really beneficial to that overall experience. It's not just in the back, it's up front too.
Man, so good. So good. So for you, being someone that you really do, you charge full steam ahead, you're willing to adapt and evolve and incorporate new softwares and new tools in your practice all the time, with a pretty good success rate, right? So what is your first step? If you're investing, let's say you're going to change over to even something on the business side, you're going to bring something new into the practice, whether it's on the business side with patient communication software, or on the clinical side with a scanner, or anything else that may be new to you. What's the first step for you with your team to get going in the right direction on how to implement that, incorporate it, and get as successful as possible with it as quickly as you can?
Well, if you read Simon Sinek's book, he says to start with why. So that's up to you to figure out why you need the technology that you're going to integrate. But it's kind of funny because when you approach your team with it, I think you kind of start with what. You tell your team what you're getting, and then you tell them why you need it. And then hopefully they will be able to bring those two together. And then you got to figure out how you're going to use it. And so, there's a big, your job is to figure out, there's so many things out there that you can incorporate. Why do you do what you do? And figure out where it's going to be best for you to first implement technology. And then you need to share that vision with your team. And if you've got the right team in place, they're going to be on board with your vision, with your mission, and they're going to support and rally you in whatever you do. And they're actually going to get kind of excited because, that's a big thing. They've got to be excited about what you're bringing on board as well. And that's your job as the leader. You've got to excite them, through your why. And if they're on board with it, they'll be excited.
Yeah. Boy, so good. So good. And, I think the way your practice continues to be successful, and the more and more you're getting out there as a speaker and a teacher, shows that what you're saying has has legs. It's true, and you're proving it day in and day out. So one way that people can connect with you is that you have started a Facebook group for dentists and dental professionals called Dentists in the Know. Do you want to share a little bit about DINKS with everyone?
Yeah, so a couple of my I'm also a member of Catapult Education. I don't know if I've mentioned that, but Catapult Education is a group of speakers throughout the United States and Canada as well. And so one of my co-speakers in Catapult, we were, I would say, bored during the pandemic and looking for ways that we could maybe provide a little bit of motivation to some dentists. So we started this Facebook group called Dentist in the Know. And, one of our visions is much like you, is that we wanted to have a live update. So every week, Wednesday nights, 7:30 Central, we have a live show. We have a guest from the industry on the show, kind of a weekly pep rally. And then we go over some pertinent news that's going on in our profession. And then we have a guest on the show. And it's been so much fun. It's like, you realize you're doing the right thing when you do this every week and you don't get bored and you're not making a dime doing it. And so, it's just fun. And so, it's like every week, it's like that time is penciled out. My family knows, I know, and they know that it brings joy to me. So I really enjoy being able to do that. So, yeah.
Well, and you can tell that joy is, catching on, because your group is growing by leaps and bounds every week, and I'm really happy to see that, because I think especially in the social media world, I think we as dental professionals, we need some positive energy. We need a place that's really solutions focused and supportive. And that really seems to be the theme of the ongoing narrative of everyone that participates in the group. And I really appreciate that about your group. And another thing I appreciate about you, Chad, is that you really participate in all of the conversations. You are fearlessly putting yourself out there with your thoughts and recommendations and what you're doing. And you all even do like a Friday fail. You just starting the lessons that you all have learned. And so it's a great place. If any of you that are listening or watching, you may be watching on Facebook right now, so just go find Dentists in the Know right now and request to join the group.
Thank you.
I think you'll find it to be refreshing, a little bit of fun, a little bit of education, and a lot of support. So, Chad,
absolutely.
Thank you for your time today. My big takeaways, really, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of, not to be afraid of the evolution of technology and what digital means for your practices today, but to have it founded in a really strong why and vision of what you want to accomplish personally in your professional life, and get a team on board with you that wants to pursue that why with you with passion, and then make room to help them all, including yourself, be successful with whatever you invest in for your practice. It is important, no matter what choices you make and what you invest in, that you continue to build and add to your practice to keep it as up-to-date as possible, if for nothing else than for whomever you expect to come after you and bring themselves to your practice. If you are expecting to transition, to sell, I think it's important that you start considering, where do I need to upgrade? Where do I need to evolve my practice to be attractive, not only for team, for associates, for buying doctors, but for, just as Chad had said, for those patients that are specifically looking for that type of care. So any other final thoughts on your end? Anything that you might want to encourage people about regarding making these decisions for themselves before we wrap?
Just to any dentist out there, you said something earlier that just kind of stuck with me, but we're all prone to mistakes. We're all prone to failure. And I can tell you that technology's come a long way, and if you incorporate it the right way, it's not going to be a failure. It's going to be something that will really benefit your practice for the long term. And just like a gym membership, you got to use it or it ain't going to work. And if you're willing to use it, willing to learn it, it's going to be a great success.
I love it. Well, Chad, thank you so much for being with me. For
Thank you.
all of you that, if you've enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Duplantis, please do go find Dentists in the Know on Facebook and touch base with Dr. Duplantis. He's a tremendous resource and obviously very passionate about our profession and the work that we're all committed to doing day in and day out in our practices. And so thank you for joining us. Thanks for staying looped into the Jameson Files community. We'll see you next time. Be well, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Jameson Files. Visit us online at jmsn.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify. Do you have questions or topics you'd like for us to answer or cover on the next podcast? Email us at podcast@jmsn.com.